So is that the thing? What is exactly the highest union? And another question that I have been asked so many times on my channel is that can your existing twin flame, the person who's your existing twin flame, can he grow into a divine counterpart?
Pain. You're in the place of your twin flame being in an opposing position. You're broken apart from them. Can they return? Yes. But the longing or the feeling that you're not able to move forward and waiting for them to return will keep you in a loop. But he says it is, because we are multidimensional. We are in a time of much greater understanding and uncovering the truth of not only our great soul, but all the many lifetimes and experiences that as you are putting that, he says, key into the ignition each day, what you're doing is you're speaking into the GPS of your soul. And you're not saying, help me remember. You're saying, I know I already do remember because I am. And he says that allows things to move just a wee bit quicker. However, he says,
Yes.
I want you to flip around your perception for a moment and to really look at, so the technology from within you, the intention is being sent out into 0 point energy. So into the field, he says, into everything being multidimensional, no time, no space, and it's traveling exactly where it needs to be in an instant. And he says that immediately collapses time.
So, apart from the disruptions that are happening and the chaos that is happening in the world, we are also seeing so many solar flashes and geomagnetic storms. What? Hi, this is Akanksshaa. If you're new here, please subscribe to my channel. If you resonate with me, please like, comment, and share. Welcome to Multidimensional Soul Podcast and a Talk Show. On this show, we have with us today Michelle Gray, channeler and medium from Canada, who's a returning guest on our podcast. A very warm welcome, Michelle, on Multidimensional Soul Talk Show and Podcast. It's so lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much. I love being here. I love being here with you. I enjoy talking to you all the time. And I enjoy being here with everyone and sharing what's coming through for the best for all of us to help us through these times.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
It's
for
a privilege
having me.
and pleasure. And we are going to channel Arnav again.
Yes,
So,
he's here.
yeah, so I'm excited.
He is too, and so am I.
So, Arnav, what is the most aligned timeline we as humanity can choose between 2025 and 2032? And how can we anchor it individually? Because there is so much of chaos happening in the world. And in 2025, we've seen clearly a timeline split and shift happening. So, can you please guide us on that?
He says, hi, Mom. He says, I love you. I want to start
I
with
love you,
telling you how
Arnav.
much I love you. He says hello to everybody. And thank you, everybody, for being here. He says, Mom, this is such an important question and such a timely question, because so many people are experiencing changes within themselves and also some confusion with how to navigate through what's happening in the world, what's happening outside of us. And so he says, it's not one simple answer, but we'll break it down and we'll help make it digestible for everyone so that they can apply this to themselves. He says, so first of all, we're looking at the world around us right now. Each one of us may be saying, things are changing. There's some things I see that I don't like. There's things that create fear within inside of me. I'm afraid of what's going to happen. I'm afraid of where my country, my community, my family, my job, my finances. He says all of these swirling questions that are going on around us. And so many of us are feeling like I have no control. However, he says, I want you to flip around your perception for a moment and to really look at the possibilities that lie ahead of us, because, Mom, as you said, the timelines that are available to us are actually timelines that are leading us to a higher place. And he says a higher place meaning closer to love, a higher place which is closer to unity. He says when we talk about our the language that is the new earth, that is what has already, he says, not completely anchored. The earth has, he says, overlays. We have the third dimension, which is anchored, and the fifth dimension, which is an overlay that is now anchoring. He says many individuals are teetering between, that are watching this right now, between fifth dimensional frequency and third dimensional frequency. Now, he says the idea is not to completely disregard either or, because he says being human at this time means that we're going to have awareness of many different things. We're going to have awareness of many that are not having conversations like we are today. So what does that mean? He says, well, the timeline that is, he says, we'll call it what is the most projected timeline for our future. He says, for the world, for our human collective, it is not war. It is not completion, in the sense that, yes, there are things that are completing, meaning there are bigger systems in the world that are changing. And some of that means that there is financial change. Some of that means that some systems of finance that we've been accustomed to are breaking down and are going to go through a restructuring. It's not all happening at once. He says it will not all happen at once. He says that the timeline that is the furthest ahead, now he's saying to think of it as percentages, because he says that there are a few different avenues. He says it's like this. We have a map in front of us. That map has a destination, and we have about 4 different routes of how we can get to that destination. He says that destination is guaranteed. It's guaranteed. The how we will get through there, the pathways, that is something that is shifting. And so for us as a collective, he says, just to give the projection of where we are right now, he says, we are going through a pathway currently that does show disruption, that does show chaos. He says, now, we're actually on a pathway that does not have the same disruption within the earth that we were on, he says, 6 months ago. And so he wants to say, does that mean that there won't be anything that happens within the earth as far as, he's saying, weather patterns and those types of things? No, those things are still there, but and he's careful in how he says this, but he wants to be clear. Catastrophe in the way that some people believe may be occurring is not. Now, he says this timeline it has rapid points to it, meaning that we may notice things change very quickly at times. Now, the other thing he says is, what can we do as individuals? Because it's one thing, he says, to look at and talk about what the projection is and the timeline for us as a collective. But each and every one of us plays a very significant part in this. And so he says, as individuals, here's the most important thing each of you can do. As a collective moving into the new earth, we're moving into the frequency of love. Individually, there are two frequencies that would be best to break down in your life. Am I moving closer to love, or am I moving closer to fear with every choice that I make? He says this is the inner work in all decisions that we make. This is the choice that we have in everything we do when we feel that we don't have a choice. It is that choice. It is that act within our own minds that allows us, he says, because Mom, as you know, we are what is creating these timelines. It is us. And so when we choose fear, when we make decisions that are singular in fear, what we're doing is we're activating, or we're putting more focus, more weight onto a timeline that is more in the fear-based energy in that direction. So he says, I would suggest to each and every one of you to really examine what you're doing, what kinds of choices are you making, and if you really look at yourself and look at the choices that you're making, gently look at, am I really acting from a place of fear or lack, or am I acting from a place of love and of abundance? He says that is the most simple thing that each and every one of us can do. He says to ground this timeline, because what you're each doing is, by doing this for yourselves, you're allowing yourselves to be present. And he says being present in your life is the easiest way to ground yourself into the 5D timeline. And presence meaning showing up as authentically as you can, showing up as you are, showing up with everything that makes you who you are, and to do that to the best of your ability. He says by practicing that, you're giving yourself the greatest opportunity to grow in the present moment, and you're also giving to the collective to be able to grow. He says we're entering a time and space that is well beyond anything that we've ever experienced in our world, and we have far more choice individually than many may realize, and now is the time to practice your presence.
So beautiful and so profound. Before I ask you,
Just thank you. He bows. Thank you.
I had actually tears in my eyes. So Arnav, thank you. How can
He says, you're welcome, Mom.
how can people collapse false timelines and choose highest vibration timeline with the help of sound, breath, and any other technology?
He says, this is a great question. And he says, this is actually much easier than we might think it is. He says, there's a couple things that we can do. He says, so let's talk about first using our own body and using our own inner technology to be able to do this. He says, let's say, for example, he says there's many different ways that we could do this as far as the emotions, and he suggests that the emotions is the most powerful way to collapse timelines. He says because it is our emotions that creates a loop that we experience. And so when we get into a place of reliving, because the emotions can make the mental state loop. So if we feel that trauma, that hurt, that pain connected to whether it's a person, place, or thing, he says, identify what it is that keeps coming up. And this would come from, he says, looking at your patterns. And so if you have a feeling of a relationship, he says, so as an example, let's say you have a friend, a mother, a partner, and this relationship is no longer as close as what it once was. And it still creates a little bit of pain. Your mind might go back to what had happened. It might go back to rerunning a circumstance or rerunning how that relationship may have ended or what caused it to close or get further apart. So he says, by using your body, what you want to do is identify, and he goes, and remember, as you're doing this with love. You're doing this in a place of love. So whisper the name of the individual, whisper the name of the situation, the place, whatever the emotion is connected to, and whisper it. Hold that intention of that person, of their face, of their name, of the person, the place, the thing. Hold the intention. And then he says, whisper what it is. So for example, let's say it was a mother. So you would whisper something along the lines of, I love you. I see you for who you are. I do not require you to change for me to feel better. Keep it very simple, he says. And then after that, he says, this is where you can invoke the breath and sound. You can do one or the other or both. He says the breath is very powerful. It is the breath of life. You breathe it in directly from your bottom of your feet, the roots going into the earth, and breathe in deeply right from Mother Earth. And expand it. And he says, and you can take it nice and slow. Something else that would be recommended is, he says, place one hand on your heart, one hand on your solar plexus as you do this, because what you're doing is you're taking that power and you're asking to have that energy folded away from the heart space and from the solar plexus. The rest of it, he says, is a great amount of trust. Now, he says, if you would like to add or only hum, use the power of humming. He says, use the power of sound with your throat. You may also, if you choose not to use your body, although he says the body is the most powerful that we have, if you choose not to, you can also use any sound. You can use bells, tuning forks, singing bowls, anything else that makes that vibration and sound, because what's happening, he says, is the intention. So the technology from within you, the intention is being sent out into 0 point energy. So into the field, he says, into everything being multidimensional, no time, no space, and it's traveling exactly where it needs to be in an instant. So that vibration is going out, and you're also using tuning, the power of the heart, the coherence of the heart, the power of the solar plexus, the trust. He says, because our nerves, our heart, going right down into the stomach, all of this combined is sending out a coherent vibration, a powerful vibration into the universe that is received instantly. And the piece past that, he says, is your trust. It is your trust to say, and so it's done. And so he says, I would recommend that you close it with something that he says, if it's something that you feel comfortable with, that you would like to use, to go ahead and use that. But he suggests to close it with, and so it is, and so it is done, to close it with thanks. And he says that immediately collapses time. Immediately.
Wow. That is really
Yeah.
powerful. And
Yes.
is there any specific way of saying hum?
He says Om. So
Oh,
Om. He says the vibration of the earth, of the universe. Om would be the recommended sound.
yeah.
He says if because it is important to understand that each individual, if there is a sound that feels better in your body, that he says it is not necessary to take exactly what we say as the only way, but that is what he recommends, he says.
Yeah. He's he's always very sweet, and
He's
he
very sweet, yes.
he never gives anything that is directive or do this only kind of a thing. So
That's right. That's right. Yes. He's very sweet. He says thank you. Thank you.
okay. So apart from the disruptions that are happening and the chaos that is happening in the world,
Mhm,
we are
mhm.
also seeing so many solar flashes and geomagnetic storms. What role do they have in our spiritual evolution? And how can we work with them rather than get afraid of them or rather than fear them?
He says nothing to fear. There is nothing to fear. He says, in fact, this is what we would call the veil that's thinning. He says this is a sign that the veil between worlds, between the seen and the unseen, is becoming thinner. And so there are many things that we're going to see. The lights, the geostorms, he even says geometric like shapes and different colored lights. The aurora borealis as being representing codes of the Akashic field. He says all of these things are translation of what has not previously been seen. So he says when we see these things, they're actually truly magnificent events. They're truly showing us, he says, what's taking place. They are signs of what we feel inside, and they're giving us physical examples around us of what is happening. The flashes, a lot of these storms is also amplification of the vibrational field. So they do carry upgrades and codes within them. So he says that they may not activate each individual exactly the same, but he says anyone that's listening to this, anyone that's here watching this, he says just know that as they arrive, as you see them, there is purpose to them. And even if your human mind doesn't understand, your soul does. Your soul does, and your soul knows how to receive it. So when you see these things, he says, fear not, say thank you. Thank you, and I trust my soul knows where to place this for me.
Yeah, but there are so many blackouts and electrical and electronic disruption, and
Mm,
because of that, there are digital failures happening and digital disruptions happening, like Wi-Fi going crazy or lights
yes,
going
yes.
crazy.
He
So,
says,
what do
yes,
we do
yes.
in these kind of situations?
He says, yes, mom. He goes, that is true. He says, because he goes, we're working with two types of technology here. He says, we're working with universal technology, and we're working with what has been created through human technology, which is actually connected, he said. But because everything is energy, because we are in a time of upgrade, he says, this is how I'd like to describe it to everybody. Think of our universal field of technology receiving an upgrade, as is every human being. And so, as we know, when our platform that we have been on, so think about your computers, your laptops, when it's time to upgrade, when it's time to get a new one, he says, think of what starts to happen. You get glitches, you get documents not saving, you get all kinds of weird things going on. He says, well, what you're experiencing around the world is really no different. He says, although, yes, I understand that there is a lot of fear there and concern. Is this coming from something bigger? Is there something greater happening? He says, what I would advise for you to understand is there is less of a nefarious type energy to be concerned about, and for you to truly understand that there is an upgrade taking place. And yes, we will experience glitches. Yes, we will experience rolling blackouts. We won't always, but he says, as we said before, we're traveling down a pathway. The destination is for sure. And does that mean the pathway and the timeline that we're on is going to be without bumps? No. He says, is there rocky terrain we have to go through? Yes. And that's why we're together doing things like this. Right, Mom?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot is happening. And in the midst of this, as some of us are ascending and not everybody is ascending, a lot of people are falling out of our lives. And the soul contracts are dynamically changing. So, what can you guide us, Arnav, about that?
He says, and he wants to speak of this gently, because he says this is something that a lot of people are concerned about. And even he says, concerned about as they're on their spiritual path, that are they growing and changing so much that they are going to pull themselves away from people that they love. And so he says this is very important to address. Yes, he says, he says, aside from this moment that we're in right now, soul contracts and soul agreements, when they have completed, when they are in a process of change, he says that can mean that relationships fall out. That can mean that there is sometimes drastic changes, abrupt changes that we don't necessarily expect or see coming. But he says, here's what I would like to share. So, for everyone that is on the ascension path, and you may have friends or family members that are not, and that are not focused on the same that you are. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that those relationships will completely fall away. So here's what I would like to tell you. He says there are some that will. And why is that happening? Well, yes, a soul agreement may be completed. The other may be that there is a soul agreement that's still present, but that person will say that is focused more on a third dimensional structure. They're not in a place where they want to grow. They may be in a place where they're feeling like facing their own shadows or facing their own scenarios in their life is very painful, and they choose not to. Maybe not consciously, maybe subconsciously. But he says, in this scenario, for any of you that are experiencing this, remember that you have a choice with how you interact, because it is not about saying, if this person is not on the same page as me, I have to let them go. But it is, I can accept that this person is where they are. I do not have to fix them. I do not have to make them change. I do not have to teach them. I lead by example of who I am, and I accept them where they are. But that also means that you have boundaries. That also means that you have the awareness of understanding what is right for you. And if that means that being in the relationship with that person is not good for you, if it means that it is toxic, or abusive or painful, then you have a decision to make, and make that decision with love and walk away. Even if that other person doesn't understand, you have to trust their soul and trust their path, that they have the right to those decisions. Now, there are some that you may be apart with for a time, and that you will come back together with in a different energy. Because when we have many timelines and many different, he says, multidimensional beings we are, so we are all projected in different spaces. There may be some that were in your life for a period of time, and you look back and you say, I haven't seen this person for 5 years. I've not even bumped into them, and I used to see them every day. Well, if you're vibrationally spaced out from that person, there is a great distance, you likely won't come into contact with them. Anyone that is in your reality, there is a purpose for them being there, whether it is to help you grow, whether it is continuing a loop because possibly you're in a place of deciding whether that relationship is still good for you or not. But here's the thing: when you make a decision that's good for you, the universe will back you up. When you make a decision from the heart, the universe will back you up. And so there's a great amount of changes that are taking place right now. But the biggest thing, Mom, I want everybody to understand is I want them to understand that by choosing themselves with love is always going to be choosing others with love. And by doing it not in a place of blame, but looking at someone else and saying they are where they are on their journey, and I honor them for where they are, but I may not choose to be in communication with them at this time.
Yeah, it's very painful when it happens with close friends, family members, and even in the case of twin flames, which is something that a new guidance that we've been receiving since the beginning of 2025. Twin flame is like real, literally the part of your soul in another body. But
Yes.
the new guidance is that the masculine, if he doesn't honor the soul contract, then you have to let them go as a person, and some other vibrational match, divine counterpart, will come into your life. And the
Yes.
earlier understanding till this year was that twin flames were born to break the templates and the conditioning in the society, and they are designed in such a way that they trigger each other, they mirror each other, and
Yes.
that's how they clear everything in the system, individually as well as
Yes.
collectively. But if
Yes.
one of them chooses not to grow or ascend, then
Yes.
the other person has already ascended, then somebody else will come. So the understanding till 2024 was that the twin flame union is the highest union, is the highest vibration union. So is that the thing? What is exactly the highest union? And another question that I have been asked so many times on my channel is that, can your existing twin flame, the person who's your existing twin flame, can he grow into a divine counterpart?
Yes.
So,
Yes, that can happen. But here's the important thing is Arnav says that it is important for you to not wait for that to happen, because he says that we have to remember that contracts or agreements, although some may be in a sense that we will break this template, we will do this work together, and then we will go our own ways. So sometimes there is something within the agreement that says once we part, we part. And other times there is different, which means the agreement is to break the template, but what happens beyond that is really up to the experience, is up to the choices. And so there's much opportunity, he says, that's within this. But the key is that if you're the individual that is in the place of pain, you're in the place of your twin flame being in an opposing position, you're broken apart from them. Can they return? Yes. But the longing or the feeling that you're not able to move forward and waiting for them to return will keep you in a loop. It will keep you from a place of not being able to receive it if they were to come around. So he says the very best thing you can do is work through that yourself and be in a place of unconditional trust, which says, I'm okay if they don't, and I'm okay if they do. And if it does come back around, you know it will be met in a place of pure unconditional love and growth. And he says that would give opportunity to a union that is met in a new vibration. And that is the key of why stepping away and coming back would be important.
So does this mean that the twin flame, the current person, has to bring in a different energetic component of his own higher self into his body, into his current person as a person, and then he can shift into the divine counterpart? Is that so?
Yes. So in many cases, depending on what the circumstances are, so when in separation, there may be experiences that are there to allow, and this is why he says this would be something that would be in the soul agreement, because there would be certain circumstances that would allow then a higher aspect to braid itself from the soul, whether it be the higher self or this higher aspect that comes in to assist that personality, that human being, to be in a higher state, that the state that you had been with them prior, they were not able to hold the amount of light. They were not able to hold that. They were not able to ground that. And so he says this is also more common than what we might think, that many of us that are going through spiritual awakenings do go through experiences where we are accessing higher parts of our soul, depending on what our purpose is. Because he says it's important to remember this is not a one size fits all. It is he says, like a working machine, a working live machine that is in real time and less in stone and planned ahead.
Okay. Many times, what is happening actually, and especially wherever we have these soul contracts where we are meant to do something together or have a mission together, they don't remember that. They don't have the soul memory of that. And I know that this entire matrix, the game itself is built that we have to forget when we come here. And then we have to remember from our heart and go back to wherever we came from. So that's how the soul expands and evolves. But how can people remember who they are? Because we've had lifetimes in as Arcturians, Pleiadians, in other solar systems, in other star systems. And we've had other lifetimes, even on Earth. And when I say we have had, actually, these are all in parallel at the quantum level. So what is happening is one particular pattern or something from one life is percolating in another life, because there are certain things that you are meant to follow through the lifetimes, and there are certain things that you are meant to break through the lifetimes. So to do all of this, we need to first remember what we sign up for and who we are. So how do we get to the remembrance?
Well, he says, being here right now, this is remembrance. Because if you're watching this right now, he says, why are you drawn to this? He says, what would be the reason why you're watching, whether you are a longtime watcher of my mom or whether you are new, why are you here? He says, you're here because your soul is reminding you. So he says, remembering who you are is alignment and presence, meaning that why am I being drawn to something? Why am I interested in reading something? He says it's understanding that we have lived in a world that will tell us that thinking things or our imagination has been a fantasy, that it is a place of detachment from the real world. He says that's not true. That's not so. He says, for many that are following this path, you can understand many times where you would feel the alignment in a story that's being told, where you would feel the truth in the sharing of someone else about their Palladian life, where you would feel the, I don't know how I know this person, but I do. They feel so familiar to me. He said, all of these things are signposts of the soul of what's been placed in your soul agreement. Sometimes it is, I'm having a moment in this space to remember a part of myself. And so with having that understanding with you, you start to build the trail of breadcrumbs. And he says, because some things will come as downloads, because when you continue to walk in this direction with that understanding, he says you'll begin to trust, because trust is a big one. Remember, the human mind has been built on doubt to say, well, this isn't real, or how could this be real? But he says this is all part of the journey. It's accepting that the human mind will question. It's accepting that the human mind will say, well, this is outlandish. How could this be true? But he says it is, because we are multidimensional. We are in a time of much greater understanding and uncovering the truth of not only our great soul, but all the many lifetimes and experiences that this lifetime is here to uncover, because so many of us are here to be able to remember. And so he says, don't stress yourself out with trying to figure it all out. He says, because like detectives, and you're all great detectives, you like to have all of the answers. So he says, keep a notebook. Keep a notebook that you call Remembering My Soul Contract. Keep a notebook that says soul work. And what you can do is, as you go through your day, your presence, which is your being in the moment to think, why am I drawn here? Or what do I feel when I watch this? Or why do I think this way? Make notes. He says, don't try to figure it all out. You don't have to do that. He says you'll put way more work and effort and complication into it than you need to. And he says, and what does this also bring up to us? Well, it's patience. The patience, because there is a great unfolding taking place. But he says, I want you all to hear this. You're not late. You're not missing anything. You will have everything that you need. Your best place is your presence. And so by keeping track, by following the breadcrumbs, you will start to create pieces of the puzzle that will fit. And he says, remember, all of us are not exactly putting in the exact same puzzle pieces, but we are all parts of the greater puzzle. And so there's little bits of truth that comes through all of us. No one person has all the truth. So he says, enjoy the journey of feeling your resonance, of feeling your alignment, and discover what it is that allows you closer to that space of remembrance. And he says, and by doing this, I will tell you, the downloads come, the information comes, and before you know it, you are in a place of complete awe and saying, now I understand.
Wow.
He's so wise.
Yes. And I remember one quote of Steve Jobs. He said that you can only connect the dots looking backwards. You can't connect them looking
Yeah.
forward. So,
Yes. Yes.
like he said that
It's so
Arnav was
true.
saying that you make notes, and when you make the notes, and then you connect the dots looking at them.
That's right. That's
Wow.
right. Yeah.
So simple and so powerful. So
Yes.
one of the things that I came to my mind is DNA is seat of consciousness, and everything is actually encoded in our DNA.
Mm.
It carries the information from across generations and across lifetimes. And we use only 2% of our DNA, is what I understand scientifically. And even though they say that most of it is junk, it's not actually junk, it's dormant DNA. When it's activated, then we activate certain gifts and powers that are dormant within us. How can we activate the 12 strand crystalline DNA? Because what I also understand is that we are moving from carbon based DNA to crystalline based DNA, and from 2 strand to 12 strand DNA. So, how can we activate that?
He says this is what happens by exactly what he had just described. So, through these acts of being present with our emotional state, with understanding the patterns, the repeating patterns in our life, he says, with presence, because this is something that is in all of our soul agreement. And so he keeps going back to, you're watching this, this is what's happening. If you're watching this, this is what's happening to you. And so he said, becoming more crystalline is going to expand your viewpoint of some of the same things you may have learned, meaning you might be hearing us speak today and grasp some of it, and then hear this again a year from now and understand it completely differently, understand it in a deeper way. That's this process.
Wow. Okay. And Arnav, can you give us any short vibrational code for practicing daily this remembrance?
Yes. Okay. He says, and he says, hand over the heart, as we say it, hand over the heart. And he says, I am not behind. I am remembrance. I am not here to remember. I am remembrance. That's it.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
I'm not
He
here
says
to remember. I am
I am
already
remembrance.
remembering. I am remembering.
Yes.
Okay.
He says the reason why we say that, he says, is I want to remind everyone, each one of us is the I am. We are the I am. And so as you are making a statement, as you are putting that, he says, key into the ignition each day, what you're doing is you're speaking into the GPS of your soul. And you're not saying, help me remember. You're saying, I know I already do remember because I am. And he says that allows things to move just a wee bit quicker.
Yeah, it's like collapsing. It's like quantum jumping.
It is. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, uh, sometime back we discussed about financial systems collapsing.
Mhm.
And in such a scenario, what is the energetic role of money in fifth dimension? How can people embody that abundance without fear?
Mm. No, he says, this does take practice. And so as he speaks about this, he says to remind everyone that it's going to take a little bit of time with it and allowing this to deepen with your experience to allow yourself to no longer be in the state of lack and fear. He says many of us have come from generations of, you know, going for transaction, time for money, understanding that money is energy, that it is a vehicle to be able to receive something, but not the only vehicle. So he says, first of all, to understand that abundance and the ability to be able to receive what you need when you need it comes in many different forms. To understand that when, and he says this is where a lot of people have a little bit of trouble, because when we pay bills, when we pay mortgages and rent and groceries, we're living in a world that accepts dollars, in a world that accepts finances. But he says, what I want you to understand is that we are all shifting in every moment to the world that is the quantum bank account, meaning that everybody has their own quantum universal bank account. So when you are looking at the needs that you have, when you are looking at, I require $500 by the end of the week, he says, well, your belief system or your trust may not be fully engaged in your quantum universal bank account. And so by asking for it, praying for it, may not give you the results. And this is where many people get upset and deflated and depleted, thinking it's never going to change, or this is lofty and not true. And he says, so to this, I tell you, overall, our world is moving to more of a system that will be more like an exchange of energy. When we look, he says, 80 years into the future, we are not working with a financial system as far as money goes. It is more to do with, he says, think about bartering, but not quite in the olden days, not quite back to what we would have described before. But it is less, it's more of an understanding of our energy and our ability to be able to produce what we need. We're in the very early stages of bringing this into the world physically. So he says, this is what each of you have within you. Everything we've talked about today has been talking about the power of your heart center, has been talking about the power of your belief in what is closer to love, the choices that I make that are closer to love, the choices that I make that are closer to fear. What I want each of you to understand is everything comes from that, including your financial ability, including your ability to receive what you need, including where did this money come from to pay my bill? I didn't expect this would show up in the mail. The things that we would think are miracles, they're everyday miracles, and we all have the ability to tap into this. So the choice that each of you have every single day in every moment is by choosing what is right for you, choosing what aligns with your heart space, knowing that who you are as a human being, the choices that you make. And he says, don't get this confused with the morality of I have to do this because it's what a good person does. It's what feels good in your heart. It's what feels right to you as an individual. And when you act, whether it be in your thoughts, whether it be in your actions, your choices, as much as possible from that space, he says, I want you to think of and visualize that there are, and he says, and it's not an earning system, it's a building of momentum energetically. So remember, don't think that it's something you have to do to earn. It's something that you're doing to build momentum in the energy. So the more that you do this, the more often you have a universal system that is building and collecting strength. So when you need something, when you think something, it is important for you to trust that what you need will be there. To affirm what you need will be there. So each day you want to say things along the lines of, I am co-creating. I am aligned with my heart in my choices and actions. I always have what I need. I always have my bills paid. I always have enough. And so it's practicing living from a place of the heart and living from a place of fulfillment. That it does take a period to build that. But when you build that with choice of your thought, when you build that with choice of your actions, what happens is the fulfillment starts to take place. You start to embody that. That creates a strength energetically, the magnet that is what is heard from the universe, the quantum field, and says, it's lit up. We can now send what's needed. And that's what's changing in the world, he says. That's what's happening. And so each and every one of you listening, you're here to help bring that into the physical world. And some of you already are. So he says, he says, I will remind you, this is also something that we will all look back on, and we will all see a very big shift in the world in our own lifetime.
Wow. Yeah, it is historical.
It is.
2025 is actually significant from creation perspective because there is a creator surge. And
Yes.
like you just said, that we are co-creating. And human beings, we kind of underestimate our own power. We are so powerful that we can create galaxies and universes. How can we bridge that gap between what we imagine, visualize, and actually bring into physicality?
He says one simple word: presence. It's presence. He said the efforts come from alignment. He says, so if we are pushing something to do something, that's in a place of lack. If we are, because creating, building, it's something that comes from a place of alignment, meaning doing the things that we feel that are creative. He says, think of an artist. An artist cannot produce the most beautiful works of art under pressure. An artist produces from a place of clarity and presence when they are moved to do so. And so he says, when you act from a place of alignment, you will create the most beautiful masterpieces. And he goes, and that is how Source creates. That is how you create, because you are a part of Source. Quite profound today, isn't he?
Yeah. And how do we align every single day?
Well, he says that goes right back to the choices. It goes right back to, he says, let's look at it simple. there might be something that somebody made for me to eat, but I really don't want to eat it. I prefer to eat this bowl over here. But if I don't eat this bowl here, I might hurt their feelings. So how could I take care of myself and still be soft to the person that prepared something for me? And he says, that would be, thank you so much for preparing this for me. I'm not going to eat this today because I feel more like this would be better for my body. But I appreciate what you've done for me. And so I'm going to wrap this up and ensure that either I eat it tomorrow or I'm going to give it to somebody who is looking for something to eat. And then I choose to eat the breakfast I've made for myself, the bowl that I prefer. He says, keeping it simple to making choices that are aligned with us don't have to mean that we are cutting somebody out of a picture or that we are completely disregarding. Making choices that are aligned to us is where is presence, and that is where our power is. And that is where everything builds from. And he says, when we can take the smallest of choices right up to the biggest decisions that we make, that is a practice that is the most important practice with our devotion each day.
Yeah, very powerful. Very powerful. Authentically, what is aligned with who you are, and then making choices and setting boundaries.
Yes.
And still coming out from the space of love.
Yes, very much. And it takes practice to do that. You and I both know that. You and I both know that it takes practice to do that.
Yeah. And what's your message for everyone today?
He says, I want everybody to hear this, to hear that you are love. Each and every one of you are love. Be at peace with who you are, especially in a world that tells so many of us who we need to be or who we should be. Remember that you actually know you best. You know who you are best. And you came here with something magnificent inside you. And to bring that magnificence out is why we talk so much today about alignment and about presence, because that is the pathway to bring all those things that makes you out. So if you are worried, or if you are stressed that you are behind, or you are not doing what you came here to do, or you are in a place of fear, he says, take this peace from us today that we are giving you, to know that you are watched, you are protected, you are loved, and you are not behind.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. And
your son is wonderful to channel. Love channeling him.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Michelle, for channeling.
You're very welcome.
And thank you, Arnav, and the entire Divine team for assisting us with your presence and with your guidance.
Thank you. Love you, Mom.
Love you, Arnav.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for watching and listening in wherever you are in the world. As Ramdas says, that we all are just walking each other home. So thank you for co-creating the new earth along with me and our guests. And if you resonate with me, do subscribe to my channel and do let us know how you find our episodes. Thank you so much. Lots of love.